Alright, so I got a new mic, so that's pretty cool. Alright, so finally here, and I already feel like I should mention a few things. I just want to say I'm not a high top hater, and I do not condone the hate that he gets. However, he is and has admitted before to be a biased Spider-Man fan.
You are biased.
Indeed I am. So take this video as an opinion, not a fact. Essays can be biased, and yes, I am biased.
And him and other YouTubers, including me, should not enforce you to change your opinion on how you feel about Tom and his iteration, whether you like him or you dislike him and everything in between. And I'm saying this because when I made my Raimi gatekeeping video, a lot of people kept saying the same shit about how I hate High Top, Raimi, and that I'm an MC dick sucker. Even though I made all of these same points before, and even had to make a disclaimer saying the same things that I said in my video in my comments. So, yeah, you guys are fucking animals. But I want to make this perfectly clear that I believe even High Top can say himself. His channel has his views, hypocrisies, opinions, and biases, and he uses this channel to talk about those things. And just because he puts his emotions into his videos with clever editing and talks about how much it means to be a filmmaker and what goes into it, he's still a person. And you shouldn't be sucking his dick and right on every single opinion he comes out with. And the same goes with me and everyone else online. We are just normal people who share our dumb thoughts online and try to show our points on how we like or dislike a certain topic. Now that we got that out of the way, I feel like we could start this video. So, for the last time in this series, without further ado, let's cripple the big ass elephant in the room and take a shit on it. Toxic ass people has used this argument to death, and if I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think the movies turned him into Iron Boy Jr. I believe the MCU fans did. Let me explain. Comics, fanfics, and memes constantly made Tom act like a 4-year-old baby that constantly saw Iron Man, Captain America, and the other Avengers into like his babysitters and parents. And if you want some evidence on why I don't think the movies did this, then why don't we take a microscope and zoom in on this little poop freckle? Throughout Spider-Man Homecoming, Tom most definitely acts like he has remnants of an Iron Boy Jr. in him, but I feel like he doesn't dig into it as much as you might think. The entire movie, he clings on to Tony Stark, not because he loves or wants to be a student, but because he feels like Tony Stark is his gateway into becoming a big-time superhero like the Avengers. And Tony, for the most part, saw one in Peter, and essentially kind of used him to fight Captain America, because when it came to Infinity War, he didn't call Peter because he needed his help. In fact, it seems like he kind of wanted Peter to stay out of the way. And you could say that, they were on a field trip and then they were super far away, but even when he did help Tony, he still sent him home. Peter had his chance to be an Avenger and he rejected it, so bye-bye. He only made him an Avenger only because he was a stowaway and he snuck on board. Okay, so now going back, Tony Stark is clearly trying to tell Peter to fuck off for most of the movie. He has no faith in Peter to be in contact with him directly, and so he's contacted through Happy, and basically tells him to go back into being a street-level hero, and he already made the suit, so here, keep it. Tony only made the Iron Spider just because he saw that Peter could be useful as an Avenger. After all, remember, Tony isn't a saint. And Peter almost seems like he's using Tony to become an Avenger, placing himself as higher than his education and calls himself an Avenger when Tony already told him no. And throughout the movie, he grows out of this toxicity and rejects being an Avenger. After his fight with Vulture, he realizes that there really isn't a hero that'll take care of street-level crime like he wants to. In all honesty, I feel like they only really started coming together at the end of Homecoming and during Infinity War. In Infinity War, Peter is constantly proving himself to hold his own, and Tony, I feel, is gaining respect for him as a hero still in high school, which makes Peter fading more upsetting, then leading to Tony going along in Endgame in order to bring him back. And in Far From Home, the public expects and wants Peter to be the new Iron Man, but Peter doesn't want to, and feels like that he might have to since he's one of the only heroes left, and then develops an insecurity that he's not good enough and that he'll mess up. So yes, there are remnants of Iron Boy Jr., mainly in Homecoming, not really so much in the other films, but he ends up growing out of that to become his own hero. This is funny, because they say that he has too much tech, and then goes on to say PS4 Spider-Man is peak Spider-Man. And the only argument they have is that PS4 Peter made his own equipment and suits, and that's true, but it's kinda dumb that you don't give any credit to MCU because he has made his own gadgets before. And after the events of Homecoming, he stripped all that fancy tech out in No Way Home. Just because he used Tony Stark tech doesn't mean that he didn't make it his own. You don't build something with a friend's 3D printer and then go on to say he built it. It's Peter's specifications and his suit. And with that logic, then Andrew Garfield's Peter deserves criticism for that as well. He got the idea from two nerds to make the spandex suit. He got his web fluid and cartridges from Oscorp. Like, literally. In his universe, you can just order web cartridges on Amazon. He got the lizard formula and equation from his dad's files, electrified web shooters from Gwen, the lizard cure from Gwen, and on top of all of that, if you look into the game's canon, Gwen is the one that sewed Peter that second suit. That last one may be a stretch, but they got the facts somewhere, right? Andrew literally wrote on the backs of everyone else to be Spider-Man. But no. Tom got two suits from Tony Stark, meaning he never makes shit himself. This one's a real doozy. And look here, just because there are big story consequences and not the fucking, Peter forgot to give Ned his notes and now Ned is mad at him, it doesn't mean that they aren't there. People mention how Aunt May does not care that Peter's Spider-Man, when in No Way Home he says that it was real messy when she did. Meaning all that whole arguing and shit happened off screen. He led on Liz, which made her write a book slandering him and calling him a liar. He got the suit taken from him because he was too reckless with it. He got scolded by fake Nick Fury into believing he isn't a good enough superhero after he almost killed Brad on the bus using Edith. That only doubles down on his insecurities, leading him into giving Edith to Mysterio, who almost killed his friend simply because Peter doesn't give two shits about his secret identity when it comes to other heroes. And because he did, Mysterio, after being defeated, reveals his secret identity out into the world, botching Peter, Ned, and MJ's chances into getting into college, and then goes to Doctor Strange to make people forget he's Spider-Man, and then ends up fucking up the spell, and then ends up bringing villains into his world. And because he's trying to save them, he causes the death of Aunt May, and then forced to have Doctor Strange cast a spell for everyone to forget Peter Parker, including Ned and MJ. He lost his family, friends, and the love of his life, and it's all his fault. You may ask why I made points connected to No Way Home, since a lot of these points existed before No Way Home came out. And yes, I did. But it was because people jumped to conclusions and started hating on the MCU Spider-Man before he even finished his trilogy. This is the MCU we're talking here, where everything is connected to everything. And while the events of No Way Home weren't most likely planned since Homecoming, they made it to where they can keep adding on and try to make a satisfying conclusion. Now look, I'm not saying that these movies don't deserve the criticism that they get, because they do deserve criticism. But what I'm trying to say is that all of these arguments, they've been layered on since Homecoming and then Far From Home. When you say he doesn't face any consequences, maybe you should let the last movie fucking finish before, you say that shit. Because in No Way Home, there are consequences upon consequences, but you guys didn't give it a chance. The original ending consisted of Peter telling Ned and MJ to stay away while still having his identity out there. But with Tom Holland's idea, it was changed. So either way, Peter was still going to be alone, but it simply had a better conclusion. And if you made these arguments, then congratulations, you jumped onto hating something before it even concluded. Kinda like how people jumped on hating TASM 2 before the Sinister Six showed up, leading to Andrew's movies dying. And this shit is why I made this series. And that's because people will find a way to hate something no matter if it's finished or not. I might have hated the Star Wars sequel trilogy since The Last Jedi, but I still gave it a chance in the third movie. And I feel like if people would have just waited, then Andrew's Spider-Man could have been better movies given enough time, and also show that MCU Peter has more than what it's leading on to be. And now with No Way Home, people are finally eating their previous words. The toxic fans now like Tom, and people who hated Andrew love him and wanted TASM 3. And you want to know why? Because they had time to show what they were really capable of. Not everything can be Daredevil or Spider-Man 2. Sometimes they need to take longer to cook. So be sure to wait for something to finish before you hate, because it can always surprise you in the end. Thank you all so much for watching this series, and I hope you guys have a nice day.